crafty friends, it's Jess from JustCrafts.com, and today I'm here to share a card tutorial as part of my personal Ocean Critters Week. So here on my YouTube channel this week, I'm going to be sharing cards featuring ocean critters and a chance to win that stamp set you just saw from Lawn Fawn called Will You Be Mine. And I will give you more details about how to win at the end of the video, but today I have a Mermaid card featuring a digital stamp and some work with Ken Oliver color bursts. To get started, I have a piece of watercolor paper. This is the Tim Holtz Distress watercolor paper, and I like this because it is pure white. Even though it doesn't take a lot of ink and you can't work it as much as some other watercolor paper, being pure white matters sometimes. So in this instance, I'm going to leave a lot of white space on the card, and that's why I want it to look white. I started by putting down some clean, clear water in a small section of this piece of watercolor cardstock because I want to control where the color burst is going to go. The color burst reacts with water, so it's only going to spread into the areas of the paper that are wet. And so by controlling that a little bit more with the paintbrush or by putting your sprayer really close to the paper, you're able to just make sure that it only gets where you want and create just an area. And basically what I want to do is create a little sort of splash effect to put the mermaid that I'll be using in. I don't want to cover the entire card base. I'm not trying to make a full ocean, just a little splash of water for behind the mermaid. And so I put two colors of blue color burst, and they wound up kind of mixing together. So I'm going to go back and add more color later, but for now I just want to get that little splash look. So I added a little bit of extra water with my spray bottle. Like I mentioned, I kept the spray bottle really close to my paper because I didn't want it to spritz all over. I wanted it to stay concentrated. If you're worried that you won't be able to keep it concentrated, you can sort of just pour a little bit of water so that it will stay in the area you want. Then I put it aside and let it mostly air dry. So it's not completely dry at this point, but I didn't hit it with a heat gun because I wanted those really clear, sharp edges. So if you see on the edges there's like these really dark lines, I wanted that look, and I find that the best way to get that look is to let it air dry. Now to get the variation in the color burst and get some areas that are much darker and others lighter, I find that if you have a just barely damp piece of cardstock, so like on top of the area that's already blue, I just made it a little bit damp, and then I shook on the color burst. It'll react a little bit, but it won't go too far, and so it'll create those little interesting lines of color and little dots of color, and that's what I'm going for. Now that I have that base of a blue splash, I want to add some interest to it. And the best way to do that is to make sure that it's just a little bit damp and shake on some more color burst. As mentioned before, I was a little bit disappointed that my blues kind of mixed together, and so by adding just a little bit more color burst at the end, I was able to bring out more of the distinct colors as well. Once that was finished, I wanted to add a little bit of shimmer because when I use mermaids, I think they should have shimmer. I don't know about you guys. I know mermaids are really popular right now, and I'm going to have another mermaid in this series, but mermaids just say shimmer to me. So I wanted to add that mostly in the area of the card where the splash was going to be. However, now that I'm spritzing again, I'm running the risk of pushing the color burst all over the paper, which isn't really what I want, and it wasn't quite as controlled as I liked. So that might be a little bit tricky to get the glitter only where you want it. A way around that might be to try Wink of Stella, but it's going to react with the color burst, so I don't think that's a good option either. I think you just need to try to stay a little bit more controlled. However, that little bit on the edges, I kind of like the way it kind of adds to this splash effect. I also added a little bit of the chartreuse because the glitter kind of made the area wet, and I wanted to, again, just add a little bit of interest since the ocean is kind of like a blue-green in some areas. I wanted to just add just a touch of green. And so I sprinkled on a little bit of that and then gave it one more spray with the glitter. And as you can see, it's really super shiny. This glitter is the Sukaneko Sheer Shimmer Spritz. and I like that it's a nice fine glitter. Now here's the digital stamp that I'm using. This is it's a free digital stamp from Elena over at JustMePrints.blogspot.com, and her art might look familiar to you because she designs for Neat and Tangled, and they came out with a mermaid set that she drew, and it looks pretty similar to this one. However, this, like I said, is a free digital stamp. So I resisted the temptation to buy the Mermaid physical stamp set, even though it is so adorable, and I will link you to both in case you prefer physical stamps. But I printed this one off, and what's nice is you can do the mirror image too, so you see my mermaids are facing opposite ways, even though it's just one stamp, and you can just do that by flipping it horizontally in Word. I'm sorry, vertically, I believe it is. So I'm coloring with my Prisma colored pencils, and I'm not going to show all of the coloring because it's pretty basic. I just want to point out a couple of things. So for the mermaid's fin, I didn't add any shading at all because I'm going to do a different technique. I'm going to cover it with sequins later, and that's an idea I got from a friend. And so I'm just focusing in my coloring on her hair and skin mostly. I am coloring her, as you can probably already tell, to look like the Little Mermaid, Ariel from the Little Mermaid. And so I have this, bright, vibrant red hair. And if you were to try to be coloring realistic red hair, you certainly wouldn't use as bright of colors. And I am using the Prisma Rogue Crimson, and I believe the Rogue Pavat. Oh, sorry. I'm reading in a different language and butchering it. Sorry, guys. Crimson Red and Poppy Red. Sorry. Much simpler than that. And basically what I'm doing is I'm laying an overall color of the lighter color. And then I'm going back with the darker color and adding some shading. But because it's hair, I want it to look like there's individual strands. And the illustrator, Elena, has given you some guide with that by creating those black lines in the hair that show the curl. And so adding darker shadows on those natural curls that she's added in is a great idea for adding dimension, but I wanted to add a little bit more texture. And so I'm just making sure that my pencil is pretty sharp, and I'm applying some distinct pressure to create lines, so it really looks like she has strands of hair. And I'm going to just continue to do that technique all throughout, trying to make it appear like it's a little bit curly as well by curving my lines. Then I am going to cut out this digital stamp, and there's a lot of fussy cutting involved, especially when you're trying to cut out those little teeny tiny arms. Some tips though would be to move your image and not your scissors. And I put a two-way tape behind it, so you can see there it's completely covered in two-way tape, and that makes it a little bit stiffer because I use a thinner cardstock so that it goes through my printer well. And so since it's a little bit stiffer, I actually find that a little bit easier to cut. And you're gonna make like little tiny mistakes unless you're like really super talented, which I am not. And so I always like have a little bit of it that looks off. And so the quick easy fix is to take something like a Memento Tuxedo black marker and run it along the edge. The reason I like the Memento is just because it has that really long brush tip. So I don't think a Sharpie would work as well, or you certainly could use it if you were, were able to work well with it. But I personally like the Memento. I do say be careful because the Memento does stay wet for a while, so sometimes if you're moving around and you're touching the areas that are wet, then you'll get a little bit of the Memento marker on your fingers, and then if you touch a different part of the stamp, you might transfer the ink. So just be a little bit aware of that. It has happened to me on occasion. And so since it's already adhesive, once I cut it out, I can just peel and stick it down. Again, I let that color burst background mostly air dry. You saw that I was hitting it a little bit with the heat gun as I worked it, but the air dry does create an interesting effect with watercolor. To make her face look a little bit more finished, I did trace over it with a really thin black pen, because sometimes with the colored pencil it dulls it a little bit. So as I mentioned before, I'm going to cover her fin in sequins. I have these from They are from Little Things from Lucy Cards, the Purely Peppermint collection. Sorry about that, guys. Slipped my mind. And I got this idea to cover the mermaid in sequins from a friend of mine, Lorena Wakefield. She participates a lot in the Gerda Steiner Designs Challenge, and as you know, I used to design for Gerda, and so, you know, I follow in the group and everything, and Gerda actually has a mermaid out right now, and so when I saw Lorena cover the fin of the mermaid in sequins, I just thought that was so cute, and I wanted to try it myself. So I'm using some different colors and different sizes of sequins because I like the way that that looks. So the Little Things from Lucy's Cards was perfect because it has a couple of different green colors in one pack and a couple of different sizes all at the same time. However, you know, if you only had one size, that would certainly work as well. But it just, you know, adds a little bit more of that scale look here. And I am using multi-medium matte from Ranger to glue it down. I'm struggling a little bit to get the glue on there with that thin tip because sometimes you get like little air bubbles caught in there. So sometimes you just got to squeeze those out. Now I'm ready to stamp my sentiment, and my video got unfocused here. Not quite sure why that happened, but it wasn't really a part of the card that I could refilm. So I'm just stamping the sentiment, and this is actually from the Gerda Steiner Designs stamp set, which I'll link to in the video description below. But it says, "Hope your birthday is a splash." And I used my Misty just to make sure that it stamped well because I am working on watercolor paper. So that is it for the card. I want to talk about the giveaway. Like I said, I'm going to do ocean critters all this week, and so I wanted to kind of motivate you to check out the whole series, and so I have this stamp set for you to win. This is open international, so, you know, worldwide, and you have until Sunday to comment on this and the other videos in the series. There's probably going to be 5, there might be 6 videos in the series. So comment on every single video for your chance to win. You don't know which one I'm going to pick the winner from, so the more you comment, the better your chance to win. And if you love critters, as you know, if you're watching this series, you can join us on Facebook for the Critter Loving Card Makers and Paper Crafters group, and I'll leave you that link in the video description below. And of course, I'd love it if you follow my channel to get more inspiration and make sure that you catch every single video in the series this week. So once I stamped the sentiment and mounted that panel onto the purple cardstock, I was all finished. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. As mentioned before, if you're interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.